Okay, hello, and welcome, class number 3, Shamatha, calm abiding. So we're looking at this shamatha practice. How is it that we can cultivate, how should we say, the sense of calm abiding? How is it that we can abide in calmness, bring this into the cushion? How is it that we can cultivate states of mind that have a cooling effect, reduce the sense of urgency, reactivity, and also shamatha having that connotation of concentration. So again, in the West, concentration feels very effortful, very nose to the grindstone, whereas within the Dharmic lens, it's more the natural state that arises when the agitating qualities are equanimized or neutralized. The metaphor of the ball just kind of bopping around on the top of this spray of this hose. We can turn the water down and the ball will naturally come to rest. So it's that idea that the mind's natural state, clear, bright, stable, if we can only provide the conditions. So this is the shamatha practice. Big picture within the Dharma, shamatha and vipassana working together, the calm and concentration with the investigative qualities. These qualities brought together are what move us towards awakening. So this is what we're focusing on. We're focusing more on the shamatha side in this series. How is it that we can stabilize attention? Um, Within the early suttas, it's talked about quite a bit. Um, the Buddha mentions it quite a lot in so many suttas and so many conversations, the importance of cultivating concentration, of cultivating states of jhana, taking various objects of focus, reducing the quality of dukkha or distress within them, and then even entering into that object as a doorway into deeper states of concentration. When the concentration is sufficiently developed, it becomes so much more powerfully available for the vipassana work, the investigative work. Um, Unfortunately, within a lot of the contemporary modern vipassana movement that seems to be ubiquitous in the States, there is this wholesale disregard for concentration, stating it as though it's not necessary. And a lot of the mindfulness conversations are, how is it that we can cultivate mindfulness? But it really disregards um, the utility and the power that happens with right concentration. Part of this series is about really emphasizing the importance of cultivating concentration and how when that access concentration is available, how it can really empower so much more aspects of our practice. So let's get into things. Okay, here we go. Alrighty then. So we're going to be looking at the jhana, entering into jhana states. The jhanas are what's referred to oftentimes the shamatha jhanas within early Buddhist practices. So deep states of concentration that develop through shamatha practice. So shamatha practice taken to its maturation leads us into jhana work, essentially deep states of concentration. Um, when we look at the Eightfold Path, this is one of the ways that we can define right concentration is the jhanas. And I've heard it interpreted that way, that um, right concentration means, jhana 1 through 4. So those are referred to as the rupa jhanas or the bodily jhanas. Then there's the arupa jhanas. Various texts will say, different numbers. But the arupa, meaning the non-bodily, where we're working more into perception, spaciousness, selfing, non-selfing. But 1 through 4 is about how is it that we can focus in on the bodily expression. So again, um, facets of stabilizing attention and allowing that to deepen this experience within the body. So characteristics establishing of shamatha, deepening of concentration. And I used this term before, access concentration. It's like when our concentration is sufficiently matured, it's something that becomes available. We can sit down and it can turn on. Just in the way that if we practice metta um, and it matures, we can just kind of sit down and just intend metta, and that heart space opens and becomes available. Similarly, with shamatha, we practice it sufficiently. We can sit down, intend concentration, and it just turns on, and it has its own particular flavors. It's a felt experience. So, for those who went through the Anapanasati series prior to this, in the first tetrad, the Kayana Anupasana, it goes from breath, long, short breath, into the full body of breath, into the calming of fabrications. Then it moves into the second tetrad of piti sukha. Essentially, what that's doing is it's kind of a rough sketch of how to enter into the jhanas. So we had a light conversation about that when we were going through the anapanasati practice. But there's some utility within that. How is it that we can focus on the breath? Allow that full body of breath to occur, noticing the calming and stabilizing qualities of it. Now, it was brought up earlier, what if the breath ain't doing it for you? It seems to me that in any group that I'm in, it could be as much as 20% of people report that the breath can be unpleasant. In particular, there can be some anxiety or anxious quality. Um, you know, we don't necessarily need to go into the breath. Whatever objective focus that you find that you can relate to, that gladdens and balances the mind, that brings a sense of a pleasant quality and a calming quality. That's sufficient. And so, even though breath is very often mentioned, and it's kind of the most popular go-to for shamatha, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Any object that we observe can be a shamatha object as long as we're noticing the pleasant and calming qualities of it. Certain things might not be pleasant or calming, so they might not make for good objects. But um, if we just look for the pleasant and calming attributes of an object, that really opens up the scope. So much of shamatha is the response that's being developed uh, from inclining our attention, resting our attention on a particular object. So, yes, entering to the first jhana about entering in through joy, or entering in through piti, entering in through having that really stoking that pleasant response. So last week we were looking at this positive feedback loop. How is it that we can notice the joy within the breath, or whatever object of focus of choice? What is the pleasant qualities? And then by noticing the pleasant qualities, giving yourself permission to feel the pleasantness of that, it creates another pleasant moment. So we can create this potential positive feedback loop. So breath, pleasant aspects of breath, and again, opening up that scope. Sound was mentioned, external sound. Many people report that's a restful abiding, a spacious awareness, being aware of spaciousness, awareness of awareness. There are a lot of practices that can be very, very sufficient to cultivating of shamatha. And another thing that I'd like to kind of direct our attention to is the sense of bodily flow. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit because, we mentioned the anapanasati practice, entering in through the body, and entering in through the body and that sense of the calming of the bodily fabrications. It's a reality. We can sit down and we can start to meditate, and it's like, oh, I'd like to get into a pleasant abiding, but there's this crick in my neck, there's this restlessness quality in the body, there's all sorts of things that want to get in the way of noticing the pleasant qualities. So if we can attune ourselves to fluidity, flow, then there's some utility within that. Again, going through the anapanasati training in terms of being aware of the body, calming the bodily fabrications. There's something about calming those fabrications, the hindrances, if you will, that softens the blockade, that allows the piti sukha, that allows the pleasant, energetic response to come forward. Here we have a quote. I believe this is from the Jhana Sutta. I did not attribute it. My apologies that I don't have my references here. This is from the Jhana Sutta. There is a case where an individual withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful qualities, enters and remains in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. They savor that, long for that, find satisfaction through that. Staying there, fixed on that, dwelling there, often not falling away from that. So there's this quality of withdrawing from sensuality, withdrawing from attachment to worldliness, yeah? Withdrawing from attachment to worldliness in our thoughts, the worldliness of the aggregates of the make up this sense of self. We're really kind of pulling in, not fixating on any of this stuff. And in that withdrawal into mindfulness, into shamatha, we can then kind of enter into the first jhana, born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. So there is thinking. The fact that like our mind is happening, is occurring, is not necessarily an impediment. So directed thought and evaluation, translated as vitaka vichara. So sometimes it's translated as that directed thought and evaluation, in terms of, yeah, okay, I'm noticing, evaluating what's going on, and I'm making decisions about how to address, how to place the mind, bring and place the mind in response. And then sometimes vitaka vichara has a sense of, okay, there's some chatter going on. So it can be useful, it can be non-useful. But these are qualities that are present. So in the, again, the anapanasati structure, there is the breath, going into the full body of breath. How's it that we can go into this body, calm the bodily fabrications, and that leads to piti sukha. So again, we don't, it doesn't have to be breath. It can be any type of shamatha experience, but eventually it will start to come into the body. In the Jhana Sutta, the qualities that Buddha was talking about here is withdrawing from the unskillful qualities. So the hindrances, the craving, the aversion, unconsciousness, restlessness, doubt, all these things that show up in the body as something that blocks our path. How is it that we can withdraw from that? In doing so, allows the piti, the rapture and the pleasure to arise. And then there is still, in that surface level, a little bit of thought is okay. So we're going to be kind of combining a little bit the Anapanasati instructions and the Jhana Sutta light instructions. So what does that look like? We're going to be working with the hindrances in the body for a while. Perfectly fine. Inclining the mind towards piti. So sometimes I talk about having this two-handed practice. We can have one hand leaning into the shamatha qualities, and one hand just in the background, just being aware of what these hindrances are. What are the unpleasant qualities? So, for those that are familiar with working with the feel tone, just we could look at it this way: the sensations that arise within the body, they're pleasant, they're unpleasant, they're neutral. Doesn't matter. We're ultimately going to be leaning into the pleasant and subduing the unpleasant. But at first, invite them all in. But can we allow ourselves to notice the fluidity and flow? Can we allow ourselves to notice the impermanence within the various sensation? If we can incline ourselves to track, notice the impermanence that's inherently, present, that impermanence becomes inherently pleasant. So if anybody is tapped into states of fluidity, flow, or tracked impermanence of sensation in the body, there can bring a sense of ease there. Yeah. It tends to move unpleasant sensations more to the neutral category, tends to also move a lot of the neutral sensations more to the pleasant category. There's something pleasant about noticing, oh, here's a sensation wants to expand. This other sensation wants to contract. This sensation wants to expand outward this way, contract inward this way. So we're going to start to incline ourselves towards that focus and notice, how that might remove the solidity of some of the hindrances and allow that fluidity and flow to also enhance the shamatha component. Yeah? And then, the more that the pleasant becomes available, we remain, our attention remains on that object of focus. It remains on the pleasant qualities until the sense of piti begins to really establish itself. So, what's that mean to people that might not be familiar? So, piti, it's often translated as rapture. It's more like a pleasant energy. It can express itself in many different ways. It can be um, some energetic component in the body. It can feel like sometimes like a scintillation or an effervescence. Sometimes it's a little bit more undulatory. Sometimes it's just this pleasant fluidity. Sometimes I have this sense of odd body placement. Um, some like I was meditating earlier and I had this sense of, my hands are in my lap in this mudra, but as I was feeling into them, it felt like they were actually on my knees. I know that they were connected, but my eyes were closed, but it felt like my arms were like spaciously separated. Sometimes you might get a sense of kind of elongation or squashing or this impermanence that's showing up in the body. That's just another expression of this fluidity, flow, energy, piti. It could show up in lots of different ways. Um, Again, incline yourself to notice the pleasant attributes of it. Yeah? And so the more that we can just notice the pleasant attributes of it and not be thrown off by it. Because sometimes when we have an experience of PT afterwards, we're like, wow, that is so cool. I want that again. And there's that craving quality. That's a hindrance. So that tends to shut it down. So again, so that idea of wait till the PT is kind of really established. Just continue on with your original object of focus, working in that way until the PT really has this momentum to it. Then we can turn our energy towards that. And then what happens there is we can notice that even though it's pleasant and has all these cool attributes, there can still be a subtly agitating quality within it. So again, how so that we can lean into having some equanimity with that, and that can begin to reduce the agitating quality, and then we can move more into the appreciation of that experience, a little bit more of an emotive appreciation. And that takes us into that second place, moving from piti to sukha. But that's just an overview. Let's just play around with the technique. So we're going to move into 4 points of breath in the beginning, just to say what we're doing. For those that prefer not to work with breath, whatever object, shamatha object of focus that you do prefer, go into that. Then we can move into the body, being just whatever sensation, be it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We can track the impermanence, be it expansion, contraction focus. Yeah? Noticing the inherent kind of movement that can potentially be available. Yeah? That may incline the solidity of sensation to become a little bit more fluid. That may incline the hindrances to be reduced. And what remains is kind of fluidity, flow of a calm, abiding, pleasant attributes, which that's creating the conditions for the PT to arise. So
Right.
shamatha is just a response to what we're focusing on.
I have
And
a quick question.
yeah,
I'm sorry. Um, you mentioned that if a person didn't want to focus on breath, they could use another option. Can you give an example of that?
sure. So, like it was mentioned earlier, external sound. If external sound works for you, then that's something that is perfectly fine. So, bringing your attention more towards this auditory space, and then just kind of thrusting your attention outward into this field of external sound. Uh, and, sounds may arise, sounds can pass away. There can be qualities of restfulness, qualities of activity, but it is somehow very impersonal and can be very restful when we really kind of lean into kind of the emptiness, the spacious quietude that can be available. So, sound is a popular one. Um, Sometimes other awareness of spaciousness, even if it's not through sound. Sometimes the body has this a priori awareness of spaciousness that can be pleasant. Sometimes I like to also work with just awareness of awareness. Um, there's different qualities that we can look into. See, hear, feel, rest. is another focus that we can have. Let's see, in my morning sit group, somebody was talking about how when their mind gets quiet, their optic nerve gets going, and they notice this kind of kaleidoscopic, amoebic uh, flux and flow of lights and colors, which is a popular thing a lot of people get. And so it happens, it's natural, but for a lot of people, that can be a pleasant thing. So that can also be an object of focus too, if that's something that we can find pleasant and restful. Do those options, any of those options, feel like accessible or workable for you, Selena?
Yeah, perhaps some of them. I was just more actually curious than because the breath works okay for me, but I just want to know what other things could be explored as well.
Yeah, feel free to explore any of those.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Right. So I think I've kind of sufficiently kind of walked us through that. So how about does anybody else have any questions um, about about anything that I've mentioned thus far?
I have one question in the chat about whether like pleasant memories are considered a hindrance or positive feel tone. It was something I've been struggling with, but maybe distracted with lately. We're in a couple of sits. I think I'm so used to meeting negative memories, like welcoming negative memories, but I've actually had a good number of pleasant memories come up. But when we say like pleasant feel tone or like label positive, negative, neutral, are we referring more to the breath? And if it's more that kind of, I think you said agitated energy, is that more of a hindrance where we notice it, but then go into try to come back to the object of focus rather than trying to deepen that positive memory, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So pleasant memory. So pleasant memory. By that, I'm thinking that there's thinking going on, that you're recalling events and stories and such. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, but not like a deep story, just like a memory of eating chocolate fudge. And then I start laughing out loud in the middle of meditating.
Okay, so it's like a simple image that arises, and there's this association of some sort of pleasantness that happens. Okay, so yeah, I mean, like, this is something that I didn't really talk about, but we, within shamatha practice, there can be very much a dovetailing of metta. And within the metta practices, oftentimes, cultivating states of kindness, friendliness, appreciative joy, etc., etc. Um, yeah, how is it that we can prime the pump? So they talk about different meta helpers, so bringing up a loved one, a spouse, something that has that deep association. So I mean, we could make an argument that going in through the meta route of bringing up an image of something that inclines the nervous system to have that response, but when that response is present, can we let go of the image and just be with that felt tone, and then use that as our object of focus? And then it might change. I mean, if you're talking about something kind of like pleasant and fun and there's this active quality to it, if we take away the image, there might be that echo of that pleasant feeling that might begin to like chill a little bit. But I think that, you know, as long as we don't kind of use it as a crutch, ultimately it's about kind of entering into the body and being able to kind of work with what is, and then kind of incline ourselves towards the pleasant. I don't want to give too much of a leash to engage in discursive thought. But does that sound workable, Pragya? Or?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we all know that Pragya is going to be thinking about fudge. All right, allow yourselves to come to a comfortable upright position. Allow yourself to straighten up, settle in, as though the spine is a stack of coins, one on top of the other, allowing your posture to be more of balance, less of effort. Just taking a sample of the weather. What is the experience of the body? What is the experience of the mind right now? Restlessness or calm, focused or distracted, quantumous or reactive, however mind and body is, that's perfectly fine. And then begin to turn your attention towards your shamatha object of focus. Whether that's breath, sound, spaciousness, awareness, whatever your object of focus, really allow yourself to discern what are the pleasant qualities. And pleasant qualities are whatever is enjoyable about it, whatever it is about it that brings a sense of chilling out, settling in, sense of tranquility. So, this is what we're leaning into, the pleasant qualities there. So, the more that you can lean into the pleasant qualities of shamatha, your shamatha object, really allow yourself to enjoy it. And the more all the different aspects, attributes of the mind really would like to lean into this experience. So, there's the noticing the qualities, and there's the allowing the qualities to come in, like water soaking into sand, tea permeating into the water, allowing it to affect you. Good. And we can continue to have that going on in the background. And we can open up this awareness to include this body, the 2 arms, 2 legs, back in front of torso, neck, face, and head. And just allow yourself to open up to this experience of the body. So you can still have whatever object of focus going on, whether it's sound, spaciousness, awareness, breath, or partial awareness, just opening up into the body. And there's various sensations, some pleasant, some unpleasant, some neutral. So, focus. We're not necessarily discerning the pleasant from the unpleasant and neutral. We're just being open to any and all sensation. Whatever sensation just comes to the forefront. But can we notice any ability or any presentation of want for movement? The sensation that you're aware of in this moment. Does any part of it want to expand, move outward, spread into space? That's expansion. Any aspect of that sensation want to contract, pull in, collapse? It's contraction. Some sensations want to do both simultaneously. One part wants to expand, another part wants to contract. So let's look at the movement of the sensation. So if you care to use a labeling set, it's expansion, contraction, both or none, with respect to any and all sensations. We're meeting this whole activity with a sense of acceptance, kindness, equanimity, with the intended response that ultimately this will begin to soften this bodily experience. So as I'm doing this focus, it might sound something like this: contraction, expansion, expansion, contraction. Both. Not sure. Expansion. And so on like that. So to be passive, easy, just play with it. No expectations. Contacting, labeling, exploring, accepting, and releasing whatever sensation you connect with. It's this response of acceptance, equanimity, that reduces the distractiveness, that reduces the obstructiveness, that reduces the opacity, the sensations that may be hindrances. Lean into that equanimity response. We can begin to roll back into the shamatha focus. And that may shift or change. Breath might become more expansive. We're resting into sound. There may become this spaciousness and with the body. Just incline yourself to notice whatever it is in your experience here. It helps to facilitate this pleasant abiding and this calming. Sometimes the qualities of expansion itself. Well, it's this pleasant abiding. But part of this expansion contraction focus is to keep part of the awareness into the body. So we can begin to notice, observe piti if it begins to arise. And again, any of that pleasant, energetic, effervescent quality, however it presents itself. Whatever fluidity or flow arises, just yield, yield, yield to it. Whatever pleasant qualities arise, yield, yield, yield to that. Any fluidity, pleasantry, allow that to be in the dominant focus. Allow it to absorb your focus. This is an absorption practice. How much of your awareness can be absorbed in the pleasant, calm abiding. So enjoying the quietude, not needing anything to be different than how it is. Abiding in the shamatha object of focus, allowing yourself to yield to any flux, flow, fluidity, pleasantry, quieting, the stabilizing of the mind. May, doesn't necessarily have to, but may open up a pleasant energetic response. To whatever degree it's there, just permit, allow, stay with your main shamatha focus. Part of it is about being quiet, listening for it, feeling for it. Another part is permitting, allowing, withdrawing from any craving, wanting, striving. It's about creating the conditions for the seed to naturally respond and grow. Born of an absorptive focus. So this Vitaka Vichara, this directive, discerning thought. So the evaluating what qualities are pleasant, shamatha, permitting, allowing those. It's the evaluating and the directing your attention to lean into those. So stay with your shamatha object of focus. And to whatever degree any pleasantness is building the background, to whatever degree piti might be present, just allow it. Don't jump to it too quickly. Stay with your objective focus. And also, the more still that we can keep our posture, the more that we can really attune to the subtleties of these pleasant experiences. The gross movements might also tend to shut them down. Okay, at ease. Post-bell practice, leaving yourself open to continue to receive the merits of what you've generated. Okay, so thank you everybody for your work this evening. Thank you everybody for the way that you've cultivated your attention. And hopefully this practice you'll find to be helpful. So again, reminder, this video is going to go up on YouTube, so feel free to come back and use this as a support for your practice to continue to train this way. So I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we can end with a dedication of merit. By the merits of these acts and other such virtues, may we attain liberation for the benefit of all beings. We bow before those who have come before us on the path, after us, and to those who walk beside us on the path. Thank you so much, everybody. You're all amazingly awesome. Hope to see you all next week.
Thank you.